Still muted, Chip.
Yeah, this is really irritating me because this is muting itself. Sometimes it unmutes at the end of the introduction. This time it stayed muted. And then when I try to unmute it, it remuted itself. So this is another technical difficulty. But then again, welcome to Spindle City Straight Talk. I'm Chip.
And I'm CJ.
And it is Friday in the Rib, and we got a ton of stuff to talk about. A lot of things have happened over the past few days, and I think we've got some very interesting things to show you. So, CJ, you want to?
I, you know, I think one of the big things that everyone's still talking about is the McDonald's incident that happened this week. And there's other things that are going on that people don't realize. First off, people are taking sides. Some are taking sides on the uh, teenager side, some are taking sides on the police side. I'll be very honest. I'm siding with the police. I've watched the video very closely. I've watched it several times. The first arrest, that uh, teenager was asked several times to leave the McDonald's restaurant. The manager did not want to serve him. He said he wanted to place an order because he was hungry because he didn't eat lunch at school, because he doesn't like the food at school. And that's fine. But it's the restaurant can turn around and say, no, I don't want to serve you. How many times did you used to see signs that said, we reserve the right to refuse service to anyone? I mean, I remember seeing that all the time as a child. The restaurant doesn't have to serve you. They don't have to sell you anything. They're in the business of making sales. Now, somebody who can be a curmudgeon in the city, I had a conversation with, and he turned around and said, well, look, they've got a common victuals license. They have to sell it. No, they don't. No, they don't. They just can't discriminate against anyone. That's all. They can't discriminate against anyone. Just because they have a license from the city doesn't mean you have to sell to people. You have a common victuals license doesn't even mean you have to have your restaurant open. And as a matter of fact, the McDonald's has closed their restaurant to in-restaurant dining. You've got to place your orders through the drive-through now. But that individual, the first arrest, like I said, was asked several times to leave the restaurant. He refused. Then when he left the restaurant, he went out one door, went around the building, and came in another. That's it. He was told by the manager he didn't want him there. He was told by the police officer that he didn't want him there. He wanted him out of the building. He failed to abide by a lawful order. He failed to abide by a trespassing notice. He was arrested. And the cop went up to him and grabbed him by his backpack and said, you're under arrest. And the kid started resisting him. But here's where this comes from. And, this is a sad part about it. This doesn't just happen at McDonald's. This also happens in the school. Are you ready? Are you ready?
Oh shit! Tiara! 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 Oh my god! Tiara!
So as you can see, these children are also doing the same thing while they're in school. And the last melee that you saw in that video is clear. They did the same thing at the McDonald's. So if these kids are learning this or participating in this in school, what's to prevent them from doing it outside of school? And people are saying, well, the parents aren't raising them properly. No. The problem is that this school has no discipline. No discipline at all. And, Paul Coogan goes around saying, I was an educator for 30 plus years and da-da-da-da-da. And, I was the vice principal and everyone went around and, they called me the Cougs and da-da-da-da. Yeah, that was the problem. You didn't show them any discipline. Your idea of showing discipline was, yeah, high five. Hey, Cougs, how are you? No, that's not discipline. Okay? That isn't discipline. and these children needed discipline. I know when I went to school, okay, if I had pulled any of that, okay, I would have been sent home. My mother would have kicked my butt. My father would have kicked my butt. My grandmother would have kicked my butt. That's the way it works. Okay? That's the way it worked back then. Back then, if you did something in the yard or you did something in the neighborhood and the neighbor didn't like it, your neighbor cracked you. And you dared not tell your parents because it would get even worse. That's how it is.
Well, listen, this brings a whole myriad of problems up that we see. First of all, I saw a video that had more of that. It showed the thing spilling over, or may have been another fight into the cafeteria. We played videos a year or so ago, or maybe more than a year ago, about fights at different schools. My question is, was the school committee ever informed of these fights and what was being done about them? And if they were, why didn't they do anything about it? I'm not saying they did, but if they did and didn't do anything about it, like they didn't do anything about Malone until they were pressed, and ironically enough, one of the individuals who helped covering it up is now running again. He took one term off and he's running again. So you can't cover up these things. They're young adults. They're not children. They only want to be called children when they're looking to get out of something. The reality is that we have got chaos in our schools being covered up. Now, if the school committee doesn't know about it, obviously they should. These tapes should be turned over to the police, to Channel 10, Channel 12, because this is the thing, this kind of behavior not being nipped in the bud, now it spills over like it has everywhere. And our police, now to get off that one, because it's just a simple matter of absolutely no accountability for actions, antisocial behavior. But when it gets down to the police, listen, you know, I really respect what police officers do. And I know some people go, I know there was a few people say, oh, the police should never be criticized. That's not true. You know, there are bad police officers, like there are bad firefighters and bad plumbers and bad electricians, and they act out. And it's the job of the police themselves internally, and they have a mechanism for that. And it's a union's job, not like a defense attorney, to get somebody off that did something really bad. It's a union's job to ensure that the punishment fits the crime. In other words, if somebody that the chief doesn't like that has a minor infraction and he tries to fire them, that's when a union steps in and says we go to arbitration if we have to ensure. And I don't know if there's a progressive discipline plan in the police department or in the fire department or even in the school department. But I do remember that every time we have a problem there, it's the same answer, especially with staff and employees. With Malone is we don't have a plan in place. We don't have a disciplinary guideline. Well, why not? Why not? Well, we do actually have one, because with Malone we had the federal law that prohibits sexual harassment. But look at what we put the police in. They go there, they're destroying businesses. Now people can't go into McDonald's and sit down. I saw an incident like that maybe a year ago at Newport Creamery, when two students went in, were screaming and yelling and carrying on, yelling at the waitress. The manager tried to throw them out. They were fighting with her. They knocked things off the table on their way out, broke the door, assaulted the manager. This behavior is crazy. But this is the problem the police are in. They did something and now they're going to be sued. If they didn't do something, they were going to be sued. Because if they didn't do anything and somebody, some employee or some child got hurt, they'd be suing a police department for doing nothing. That's why nobody wants to be a police officer. That's the problem. And when we talk about problems in the police, we're not talking about the police officers and the firefighters and the teachers who walk into that school every day, to walk out onto the streets, to walk into the fire stations. They're doing their job. And you should respect that job because they're trying the best they can. What creates these environments are the leadership. That's why we say, where's our outside investigation of the police department, the upper echelon? Not the police officers. They're out there every day, putting their life on the line. Not every firefighter, not the teachers. How do you think the teachers feel? Now, we saw a situation with the shooting where a businessman had 5 clients in there. He may never get those clients back again as gunshots rang out. Now we got McDonald's. It happened in Newport Creamery. Now if they shut down McDonald's, where are they going to migrate to again? Newport Creamery, and they're going to close Newport Creamery? I mean, the effect on our society and our businesses is immeasurable. And this is the lawsuit era. Everybody's suing. So I'm going to tell you something. I looked at that video footage. I think the police, and I will agree with Chief Gorman on this one, I think they performed admirably. I think they did their job. And like I said, if they didn't do their job, they'd get sued. Because if one of those kids got hurt, they would have been in court saying, why did the police stand by and let my son get beat up and put in the hospital? It's a catch-22. And that's a reality. But where does the blame lie? Why does this happen? And you and I had the pictures on this show, CJ, of the bathrooms being vandalized and fights a year ago. Nobody's heard a peep. Cover Up Coogan and his Cover Up School Committee, and if they haven't heard about it, they should have, and then somebody should be fired. This is the problem. In this city, nothing is ever brought to the people it should be brought to, and it's always covered up. But those police officers were doing their job, and they should be commended for that. And this city should not drop this or try to pay them off because they don't want to spend the money. Stand up for your police officers and stand up for the rule of law. Send a message to these kids that this is not a 3-ring circus. This is a society of laws, or at least it's supposed to be. And when people behave that way, they should be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. The problem is the leadership in this city. We have the most least transparent city council, school committee, and mayor in the history of this city, and the results of that are being shown every day. So back to you, CJ.
I mean, have you been reading some of these comments? I mean, this is very interesting. People using TikToks to generate these things, people showing it all out. I mean, you've got Christopher Peckham, who used to be the public safety chair, and he said, I'll bring his comment back up. He said he was never notified. The officials never notified of the violence. He knew about the M80s in the toilets, but not the gang violence. This is what happens. The school department covers everything up because that's Paul Coogan. That's Paul Coogan. Cover up Paul. He hides everything. The school committee doesn't act on it. Okay? You got Bob Bailey, who really doesn't do much. You have Shelley Pereira, who I haven't heard anything yet except asking for more money. You've got Paul Coogan, which walks around, I don't see, I don't hear, I don't say. That's the way that works. The only people on the school committee, you have Paul Hart, who's running for city councilor, who I can't believe came in, the top 9, because he did nothing on the school committee. He did nothing last time when he was a city councilor. He's still doing nothing as a city councilor. How many times I called him when he was on the school committee, and he never returned a phone call. Never. Or he would return a phone call well later on when the issue was already over. This is what happens. The only people on the school committee which actually look at things and do things about stuff or vote their conscience are Kevin Aguirre and Sarah Rodriguez. That's it. Those are the only 2 people. They're the only 2 people I see working for the schools. I don't see Paul working for the schools. As a matter of fact, I don't see a whole hell of a lot Paul working for. And that's the problem in Fall River, because as was said earlier by somebody, nobody, I like this. I created a new page on Facebook called Fall River Public Safety Alerts. It's a page to notify city residents of the real public safety issues be it violence, road closures, or fires. Good for you, Chris. I mean, you're still involved in the community, and that's great. And you're not getting paid, which is the even bigger thing, which shows that you are working out fine. And this is something that I've said all along. And I mean, I know there are school systems in the country which do this. Try banning cell phones from public schools, and the parents will be noting it in the President Avenue Shopping Center parking lot. That's a problem. Okay? That's what we have to do. Okay? At one school system, I know the kids, when they come into school, have to take their cell phone, put it in a bag that locks up. And at the end of the day, they unlock the bag for the student. Some people say it's not safe. What if we have a mass shooter or something? How are these people supposed to get in touch with their parents or get in touch with law enforcement or whatnot? The problem is they're abusing the privilege of having the cell phone. And because they're abusing the privilege, children aren't learning. Just look at the MCAS scores. Look at where our school system is. 336 out of 351 schools. We went down. We didn't even go up. This is what happens when we are ignorant to what the people are doing. Okay? It's unbelievable. And we have to be sure that we need to be on top of this as voters, as peak citizens. Okay? And we have to be sure that we work for everyone to come forward and do the same thing. If you see a crime, report it. When you see kids doing what they did at McDonald's, get involved, call the police. I'm not saying jump in there and stop it, okay, because you might get hurt. But at least call the police, get them involved, okay? The community has to come together so that we can show the criminals, the gangs, the drug dealers, and the non-residents that we care about our community. The problem is nobody does.
Well, you're right, CJ. And look, it's a breakdown. It's a breakdown of order. It's a breakdown, and that comes from leadership. Now, I'm not going to say every school committee meeting knew about these things. What I'm saying is they should. And now, and if they did know it, they were derelict in their duty. The people should know what's going on in their schools. How about the people who send their kids to Durfee every day? And I'm sure they know, because I had a granddaughter at Durfee. And she said clearly that the place was a war zone. I mean, there were fights all the time. And this is not the environment. And, I know Paul on his push card said how important education is to him. He spent 30 years in education. He spent 2 terms as a school committeeman, and now he spent 2 terms as the chairman, as the mayor, and we haven't heard a word about where we stand. All they do is do what Shelley Pereira does. Give us more money so we can give everybody pay raises, create more jobs, and not hire more teachers and have discipline. Where is the disciplinary plan? Because there is, you go to the Boston Fire Department, They have a progressive discipline plan. I brought it to Fall River years ago, and our chief wouldn't implement it because he was afraid that under that plan, if one of his friends did something, he would have to discipline him because he had something. And what did they do with Malone? Oh, there's nothing here for us to. Of course there is. Non-performance of your job. Ignoring federal laws. But no, it's always, the excuse. And you know what's even more tragic? Malone's not there anymore. But there's still no plan. There's still no plan on the city side. There's no plan for anything. Because we allow them, well, not we, because we call them out, but you allow them not to hold them accountable for what they're not doing. Not just what they're doing to hurt you in your pocketbook, but what they're not doing. How many times is the school committee going to say, well, we don't have anything in writing to discipline them, so we're going to have to take this under advisement and we're going to have to do bullshit. Okay? Bullshit. Maybe Paul Coogan's got an excuse because he was never in a real leadership position. But everybody knows when you have environments like that, like school departments, police departments, fire departments that are quasi-military, there has to be a progressive discipline plan. But you know why there isn't in our city? They'll get their friends off the hook. Because if you have a plan, you have to prosecute, you have to put them, and it has to be incrementally. And I'm going to tell you something from experience. You know how many grievances, because as a union president, you got to represent everybody. Even the bad guys. You got to try to make sure the punishment suits the crime. But you know how many times I went to arbitration because the punishment didn't suit the crime? And I used that to the arbitrator. This guy never got a verbal reprimand, never got a written reprimand, never got a initial suspension for a day, 1 to 3 days. That's what a progressive discipline does. And then you build a case against somebody who continues to violate your guidelines for employment. Now, obviously, I know people are going to say, well, no, look, if somebody commits murder on duty, you don't give them a verbal reprimand. This is about people to make it memorialized in writing of what you did, every step. So you can say, look, this guy just didn't screw up now. Yeah, he got a verbal warning, he got a written warning, he got a short suspension, and he still keeps screwing up. And screw up should go, because they hurt the people that are there every day to try to do their job. But this is Fall River. We blame everybody. Oh, we got no plan. Oh, there's a city worse than us in crime. Oh, there are 15 school departments that are worse than us. Oh, so it's not that bad. We're not 351st. I mean, those are excuses. Those are rationalizations. That's what people who don't want to see anything go forward and just want to keep the status quo do. That's why people have got to vote, because the incumbents for the two you mentioned on a school committee, Michelle Dion, in a city council, they're the only ones who have earned their seat, at least in my opinion. But we can't allow this to happen. When are we going to stop this? And we still won't get a plan. When a student's killed? I mean, this is absurd. And who are the victims of this? Not only the children who have to try to learn in that environment and be intimidated by bullies and gangs, but the police officers who have to go out and jeopardize their own safety by being attacked by people because they can't follow the law. They have no, they're not even socialized. Because you said it. I'm going to tell you something. If I, when we were younger and running around Pleasant Street, more than one cop gave me a boot in the ass. And when I did, you know what I did? I stopped doing what I was doing and I beat it. And I'm going to tell you something. When I went home, I never told my father because I'd be pulling his foot out of my ass. But I learned there were rules of behavior. And I know everybody's going, oh, you can't do that anymore. It's abuse. Yeah, well, spare the rod, spoil the child. And I know you snowflakes won't agree with that, but I have a right to my opinion. And I'm not talking about beating your child senseless. But, you don't even need corporal punishment. You tell your kid, yeah, you got to do a fight, that's it. Give me your phone. You're staying in your room. You're not going to go see your friends. No TikTok, no whatever else they play, no video games. Behave like a young adult should, because this society is supposed, and all you got to do is look at these other big cities and how bad they're getting and why they're getting bad. The rule of law has been thrown away. Everybody is entitled to behave like a unsocialized savage and get away with it. So with that, CJ, back to you.
Seems like we're going back to Mad Max Thunderdome. While we were talking about that, I pulled out this lovely piece of information. You notice on that picture, I don't know how well you can see it, that red thing in the middle of Paul's heart? That looks like a thumbtack. But here's what Paul said on his lying mailer. Invested in new equipment and increased staffing for public safety. Really, Paul? You want me to prove you haven't? How about this? This is Heavy Rescue 1. And if you look on the side of that truck, you see a yellow strap going down. That strap is holding on a ladder to replace the fact that we don't have an aerial ladder. And Chip, you know how that is. That's not safe. That's an OSHA violation, right? Would you want to climb up? And how far up can you go with that ladder?
I think that might be a 35. Of course, we've got different size ladders. Probably a 35, but we didn't have a ladder truck in service, and we had 2 ladder trucks, I believe, out. And I'm going to tell you something. To imply that would suffice for an aerial ladder is an absolute lie. Number one, a ground ladder is a ground ladder. An aerial ladder, if you ever watch one, they got outriggers to stabilize themselves. The ladder is extremely wide. It has rails, so you can bring down multiple victims when you're trying to rescue victims. That's an insult. It's an absolute safety violation, and it jeopardizes the firefighters and the public. And to say that sufficed as an aerial ladder, I'm glad somebody posted that picture, because they got rid of it fairly quickly. Because I'm going to tell you something. I would have immediately called a union lawyer if they tried to put something like that into service. And there's no reason to strap a 35 on the top of a heavy rescue, because we got them on the engines. And there'll be enough engines that are fire to use 35s. I have absolutely no idea who came up with that harebrained option, because to me, as someone who ran fires for about 25 years, I wouldn't even allow that thing to be used on a fire scene, because I would be concerned about the safety of my firefighters. So, again, Paul, lying again like he always does. So that's number one. Let's see what's number 2 on the other one. Let's go to a few more of his bullet points that aren't really real.
Sure. supported a full range of economic development projects. I don't know what projects he's talking about. He's claiming successes on all these businesses which are expanding because they want to expand in Fall River, and we don't have any space available for new businesses. Well, if we don't have any spaces for new businesses, then that's not a lot of economic development. But here's what really gets me. Utilized ARPA stimulus funds to save taxpayers money. You'll notice he didn't say, and after those funds are gone, which they are now, because we only have $18 million left, and it's being spent on the DCM building on Lewiston Street, that your taxes and your bills are going to go up because there's no money to subsidize it. And I don't think that it was legal to subsidize taxes with the ARPA money. I really don't.
Well, let me get back to that other one. There's no space. Paul, have you ever walked up Pleasant Street? I see plenty of space on Pleasant Street. New businesses, I'll tell you the businesses you've been promoting. Market rate housing, market rate housing, market rate housing, and more market rate housing. Businesses are expanding? What businesses? A nice little half-truth again. What is it? Blount expanding? So they put a few more employees. What does that do for the citizens of Fall River? Where are the local retail stores? The stores that, places that used to be viable small businesses on Pleasant Street, gone. Gone. So that's a crock as usual. Everything you expanded, you're a spinologist did a pretty good job, but that dog don't hunt. I'm sorry. We got no space. Call Carlos Caesar. See if he can find you some space for those so-called phantom businesses that want to come here but can't. I never saw a business that wanted to go somewhere that a city didn't find space for if that city was truly invested in promoting small business. You are not committed to small business one iota unless the small businessman happens to be one of your friends financed by one of your other friends. The reality is that all you're interested in is getting your friends rich and making the developers rich. That's it on that one. And as far as the other one is concerned, that almost is beneath even comment.
What's interesting is, as you saw what Mr. X said, Mr. X said that Paul's trying to take credit for the stabilization fund that Jason bought. Now, Paul, aren't you doing that in debates with Sam Sutter, that he's taking credit for things that were started in the Flanagan administration? We know that politicians take credit for what things happened in previous administrations. We know that, okay? And we know it's a lie. But you don't think you're lying. The last thing I really want to talk about here, because this is important, combined public and private investments to increase Fall River housing stocks for all residents. Tell me that's not a line of bull. That's absolute bull. No, the housing stock that's being increased is for the rich. That's what's being increased for. Because if you're the average Fall Riverite, you can't afford one of these apartments or one of these houses. You can't afford them. As a matter of fact, Ken Fiola said vouchers can't even afford them. So how is that for all residents? Again, with the lies, Paul. You lie, liar, pants on fire. That's what it is. It's all lies, Paul.
Well, look, as far as that's concerned, look, we know he has no consideration for anybody except rich people. He wants to gentrify the city. He doesn't care about the people who live here. He said on the record, some people will be displaced in his cavalier attitude. But the reality is, he means he wants everybody replaced except his rich friends. And that's the farthest thing from the truth. We know he still doesn't know the difference between public housing, workforce housing, affordable housing. I mean, that's But that's to be expected. And that previous one, what was that? How did he word that one, CJ, the one previous to that?
What, the
That you
utilize
read?
to offer stimulus funds to save taxpayers money?
Yeah, you're not paying. Yeah, oh yeah. I had to get back to that. You're not saving taxpayer money, Paul, when you create jobs with them, fund them with ARPA money, and then once it's gone, the taxpayers could be on a hook. You're not helping a taxpayer by conning them about how much they paid this year in taxes by subsidizing their tax bill, because next year that's not going to be there. So they're going to pay next year's increase and what you subsidized this year. All you're doing to cover your political ass is kick the can down a road so you can get into your third term. So let's call it like it really is. This ARPA money was not spent in the best interest of the people of Fall River. Why wasn't it? Why wasn't it? Did you spend $1 on affordable housing? No. Did you look for 1 penny? Did you look for 1 penny of the $400 million that Charlie Baker put on the table for affordable housing? No. Are you going to look for 1 penny of the $800 million that Healy is putting on the table for affordable housing? No, because you said it and have said it time and time again, and then you think everybody's got the memory the memory of a gnat. We heard you say, I'm not interested in anything but market rate housing. We heard you say some people will be displaced. We heard you say those things. And now you're going to put it on a push card and pretend it's not true? Look, Paul, you do make a good politician, because I'll tell you what, you're pretty damn good at spinning half-truths and outright lies, because that doesn't virtually, if the best anything on that card is a half-truth. And some of them are just outright misrepresentations and lies. You haven't done a damn thing to help the people getting pushed out with these rents. The numbers speak for themselves, and I just hope that these people turn out, because we need them. Because I'm very, very disappointed on the campaigns of all non-incumbents. They haven't taken this message to the people. And this is the problem. Everybody just, and I know a lot of them don't have any money, but you got a pair of walking shoes, and you got fingers to knock on the door. And I remember a long time ago, that's why I love when you run over time. I remember a long time ago when Chuck Sylvia, you remember him, CJ?
Yes, I do.
He ran against John Long, Sr., who had been in there for 30 years, like a lot of these councilors, and done absolutely nothing. And people were finally beginning to get fed up. But he would have got in again. But you know how Chuck Sylvia got in? Chuck Sylvia was a clothing salesman. It wasn't Empire Men's Shop, it was the other one. I never remember the other men's shop we had downtown, because I always shopped at Empire. That was my store. I knew a couple of people who worked there. But he was a clothing salesman, worked on commission, didn't make a lot of money. But he knocked on every single door in his district, in his representative district, more than once. He knocked on my door. I didn't know him that well. I'd seen him around. I did go into that men's shop occasionally if they didn't have what I wanted at Empire, which was rare, but I knew him vaguely. But he sat down with me in my yard and we talked politics, and we talked, what he was going to do. And you know something? He beat a 30-year incumbent with virtually zero money, because he put in a sweat equity. So I don't want to hear it that, I didn't have any money, I didn't have, blah, 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 blah. Listen, if you wanted to get into the city council and you didn't have any money, you should have started this campaign a year and a half ago. You should have went to every neighborhood meeting. You should have knocked on every door twice, sent your message, and then you would have had a shot. But going to these forums and stuff and peep that 90% of the working people are still working their second job to try to pay their new rent, they're not going to hear it. But I hope people are frustrated enough, because it's not because they got a message really clearly sent to them, but maybe they're sick and tired of it. Because if they're not sick and tired in this election, when they get their tax bills, when the ARPA money isn't cushioning it, and the ARPA money isn't paying for all these jobs, boy, are they going to be coming out with the pitchforks and the torches. So with that, CJ, back to you.
Well, I will say one thing. The only thing on this card, which is accurate, and it's only a part of this card that's accurate, although there is a period after it, it says, people like you decide the future of Fall River. That's the only thing honest on the card. So I want to thank y'all for watching. Have a great weekend, and remember, stay safe, stay angry, and hold your politicians accountable. And make a run from the rain on Saturday. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.